Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
Ingrid! Ingrid! Shouted a boy's voice. Where are you? Ingrid! The boy jumped over a gooseberry bush and ran around the corner of the house from the garden to the lawn in front of the windows. Hello. Cuckoo. Ingrid. I'm here. You don't have to shout, said a tired voice from under a big fuchsia plant. You're so loud, chumps. What do you want now? It's too hot to walk before tea. I just want 10 minutes of quiet. Hereward, who was called Chumps, stood up straight, put his feet together, and made a funny bow like someone in a movie. Take all the quiet you want, madam, he said in a silly voice. I don't want to bother you, my lady. I am so sorry for coming into your quiet space. Then, suddenly, he shouted, Ow. Stop it. Hereward's funny speech was stopped by a little puppy that jumped on him and started to bite his ankles, happily barking. Stop it. Get off me, he said, trying to move away from the puppy's sharp teeth. He grabbed the rope around the puppy's neck. You'll choke yourself if you don't behave. Give him to me, laughed Ingrid. She held out her arms to the little fat puppy and played with him on her lap. Oh, he made you dance. You looked so funny. Come here, sweetie. Don't bite my fingers. Time to sleep now. Lay down on my dress. If you're done talking nonsense to that little dog, said Hereward in an annoyed voice, can you tell me if you're coming or not? I'm not going anywhere. It's too hot, Ingrid said, adjusting her cushion under the fuchsia plant. Okay, suit yourself. But I thought you'd like to go to Chatcombe, said Hereward. Ingrid quickly jumped up, dropping the puppy. Are you saying Egbert finished fixing the motorbike? You terrible boy. Why didn't you tell me earlier? You never gave me the chance, said Hereward. You just said you didn't want to go anywhere. Yes, the motorbike is ready and Egbert is waiting. If you want to go. But before he could finish, Ingrid had already run around the house. Shaking his head, her brother picked a few gooseberries and followed her to the stable yard. The Saxon family was spending their summer holiday at a farm near the sea. For the first time in 4 long years, the whole family was together again. Mr. Saxon, Egbert, and Athelstane had just come back from the army and were still getting used to normal life. They had joined the rest of the family at Linstones before going back to their hometown of Groveberry. The 6 weeks by the sea felt like a break between the hard time of the war, which was now over, and the new time that was starting. For Ingrid, these were perfect days. Having her father and brothers back and being with her family in such beautiful places was enough to make her very happy. She didn't want to think about anything outside the holiday. When she did think about the future, school seemed very big in her mind. On this hot August afternoon, Ingrid was happy to go on a ride in the sidecar. She didn't want to walk down the hot, white path to the bright beach, but riding fast on the road, feeling the wind in her hair, was something she liked. Egbert was ready to go, so Hereward sat on the back of the motorbike, and after a little trouble with the engine, they started their trip. It was a beautiful ride through the countryside, with views of the sea on one side and rocky hills on the other, with purple heather all around. Sometimes they saw little streams of brown water running through the land. Egbert was going a little faster than the speed limit, but the road was empty, so it seemed safe enough. There were no hedges to block the view of other cars, and no sharp turns where they might suddenly meet a hay cart. After an hour, they had traveled a long way and were speeding down the big hill that led to the seaside town of Chatcombe. When they arrived in the town, they left the motorbike at a garage and walked to the promenade, joining the other holiday people who were walking in the heat or sitting on benches watching children play in the sand. To Ingrid's surprise, someone suddenly called her name. When she turned around, she saw a school friend. Ingrid! What a surprise! Avis! Who would have thought of seeing you here? Are you staying in Chatcombe? No, we just came for the afternoon. We have rooms at Beachview over there. Come and have some tea with us and bring your brothers too. Yes, you must. My mother will be so happy to see you all. I won't let you say no. Taken by her friendly classmate, Ingrid soon found herself sitting in the front garden of a tall house facing the sea. While Egbert and Hereward talked about motorbikes with Avis's father, the two girls had a private chat. Only a few more days, sighed Avis, and then we have to leave all this and go home. How long are you staying at Linstone's, Ingrid? 2 more weeks, but don't talk about going home. I want the holidays to last forever. So do I, but they won't. School starts on the 21st of September. It will be fun to go to the new school buildings, don't you think? Now that the war is over, I guess you're going back to Rotherwood, aren't you? I guess so, when it's ready. But the Red Cross left a long time ago, and the whole place has been fixed up, right? I saw the workers there in June, said Avis. Oh, yes. Ingrid's voice sounded a little tight. You'll be so happy to live there again, Avis went on. I always loved that beautiful house of yours. You must have hated lending it for a hospital. I guess when you move back, you'll have lots of fun parties, right? That's what the girls at school were saying. It's a little early to make plans, Ingrid answered. Oh, of course. But Jess and Francie said you had a great floor for dancing. I think a fancy dress dance is the most fun ever. Next time I go to one, I'm going to dress as a Quaker girl in a gray dress with the cutest little white cap. Don't you think it will look nice on me? With your dark hair, you should wear something that looks Eastern. I can picture you as the hostess in a shiny white and gold dress. Please promise to wear white and gold. All right, Ingrid laughed. It's so nice that the war is over and we can have parties again, like before. Beatrice Jackson told me she could never forget that carnival dance at Rotherwood 5 years ago, with all the lanterns and lights. Some of the other girls still talk about it. Oh, the bell just rang. Let's go inside and have tea. Ingrid was very quiet on the way back in the sidecar that evening, though Hereward, sitting on the back of the motorbike, was full of energy and joked with her the whole time. Ingrid was thinking a lot. Some problems, which she had pushed away before, now came back to her, and she knew she had to deal with them. But even though it was important, it wasn't something she really enjoyed thinking about. To understand Ingrid's worries, we need to know a little about her family's history up to this point. Mr. Saxon was an architect who had built a good business in the town of Growberry. He designed and built a beautiful house for his family, and they often invited their friends over for fun. When the war started, Mr. Saxon was one of the first to volunteer, and as another way to help, he and his wife decided to offer their house, Rotherwood, to be used as a Red Cross hospital. At that time, the three boys were still in school. Egbert and Athelstane were at Winchester, and Hereward was in a younger school. So, Mrs. Saxon moved out of Rotherwood with Quenried and Ingrid, and they rented rooms in town while the girls went to a local school. For the entire war, this was how they lived. Rotherwood was used to care for wounded soldiers, and Mrs. Saxon worked as a nurse there. As time passed, Egbert and Athelstane also joined the army. With 3 of her family members at the front, Mrs. Saxon was happy to stay busy at the hospital while her daughters were at school. Then came the armistice, and the family was relieved to know that their loved ones were no longer in danger, even though they weren't home yet. By April, the Red Cross had finished its work in Groveberry, and the last patients left. The hospital beds were taken away, and Rotherwood was returned to the Saxons. The house needed a lot of cleaning and fixing before they could live in it again, and workers had been busy there for many weeks. They only finished in the middle of July. It was almost August by the time Mr. Saxon, Egbert, and Athelstane were released from the army, and they went straight to join the rest of the family at the farm in Linstones. What would happen after the wonderful holiday, Ingrid didn't know. She had asked her mother a few times about moving back to Rotherwood, but Mrs. Saxon always said, "Wait until Daddy gets back." Welcoming the 3 men home seemed so important that even the question of Rotherwood could wait. The Saxons were a very close family, and they were all very proud of each other. They cared about what everyone else was doing. Their name, Saxon, showed their Old English roots, and this was even more clear because of their blue eyes, light skin, and blonde hair, except for Ingrid. Egbert and Athelstane were tall young men, both 6 feet, and 13-year-old Hereward was already taller than Ingrid. Quenried, who loved her old Saxon name, didn't like that her family called her Queenie. She had just finished school, and now she had put up her long blonde hair, started acting more grown-up, powdered her nose, and was very careful about how her skirts and shoes looked. Quenried was upset that, as she said, she had missed the war. She had wanted to go to France to drive an ambulance or to ride a motorbike around England, helping the government or train horses. She wanted to do something interesting and exciting to help her country. "It's so unfair," complained Quenried. "Just when I'm finally old enough, all the fun things for women are closed. If only Mother had let me leave school a year ago, I would have had 3 months of fun. Now life is going to be so boring. There's nothing exciting to do." Ingrid, who was 15 and the second youngest, was the only one in the fair-haired Saxon family with dark hair. Right now, she wasn't as pretty as her sister Quenried, whose mouth was soft and her cheeks rosy. But Ingrid's eyes had a depth that Quenried's did not, and her thick brown hair fell far below her waist. She wished she could trade it for the light blonde hair of her brother Hereward. Queenie was always chosen to be a fairy in school plays, Ingrid said sadly. "They never picked me, even though her costumes would have fit me perfectly. I don't see why fairies can't have dark hair." And it was the same when we did The Merchant of Venice. Miss Carter gave the part of Portia to Francie Hall and made me play Jessica. Francie was terrible and ruined the whole thing. Next time, I'm going to wear a blonde wig and see what happens. Ingrid had been going to Groveberry College since she was a little girl of 5, sitting in kindergarten. She and Quen Reed had always been popular at school. Before the war, they gave fun parties at Rotherwood for their classmates. Even though they couldn't do that during the war, everyone knew that their beautiful house had been given to the Red Cross for the soldiers, and people admired their family for being so patriotic. From what Avis had said the day before, it was clear the girls at school thought the Saxons would soon move back to Rotherwood and would have parties there again in the autumn and winter. Ingrid had avoided answering Avis's questions, but she knew she had to be ready to give a real answer soon. The next morning, Ingrid found her mother alone for a quiet talk. "Mumsy," she began, "I've been meaning to ask you, are we going back to Rotherwood after the holidays?" Mrs. Saxon folded her sewing, put away her thimble and scissors in her basket, and leaned on the arm of the garden seat as if ready to have a serious conversation. "And I've been wanting to talk to you about this too, Ingrid. Will you be very disappointed if I tell you no?" "Oh, Muvvy." Ingrid's voice sounded very upset. "It can't be helped, dear," Mrs. Saxon said kindly. "It really can't. I think you're old enough now to understand. The war has made life very hard for many people. Some have made a lot of money, but others have lost it. We're one of the families that lost. When your father went to France, he had to leave his work, and other architects took over and got the business he used to have. It might take him a long time to build up his business again, and that's going to be very stressful for him. Plus, most of the money we invested that used to give us good income isn't worth much now. Instead of being rich, we'll have to be very careful to make ends meet. Going back to Rotherwood is impossible. Everything costs 2 or 3 times as much now, and our income is much lower. We just can't afford to keep such a big house anymore." "Where are we going to live then?" Ingrid asked, her voice shaking. "In the bungalow that Daddy built on the moors. Luckily, the people renting it are leaving, and we didn't rent it to anyone else. It will be perfect for us now. Athelstane is going to start medical school in Berkshire, and he can ride there every day on the motorbike. We hope to send him to study in London, but that's just one of the many plans that didn't work out. Will Hereward and I go to school in Groveberry every day?" "Hereward can manage, but I'm going to arrange for you to be a weekly boarder at the new hostel. You can come home from Friday to Monday." "Now, don't cry about it, darling," she said as a big tear fell on Ingrid's dress. "After all, we have a lot to be thankful for. If we had lost Father, or Egbert, or Athelstane in the war, we would have real reasons to grieve. But we still have each other, and that's the most important thing. We must stay strong as a family and support each other. Cheer up. It will be so horrible to go back to school this term and not live at Rotherwood." Ingrid sobbed. Her mother gently patted her head as it rested on her knee. "Poor dear. It's hard for all of us. We all have a challenge to face right now. Let's see who can be the bravest. We're fighting against hard times now, not the enemy, so we have to be strong. Will you stand with the family and keep going?" "I'll try," Ingrid said, wiping her tears with her handkerchief.